It is the end of the summer 2012, Columbia, South Carolina. Um, Although the name Cy Young is in the Hall of Fame and he's dead and gone, there is still in Columbia, South Carolina, a mention of his name because a local guy came out of here in the Yankee organization, ended up with the White Sox, and then ended up earning the Cy Young. But I wanted to introduce him and your name on your birth certificate because I learned from being here last time. What is your full name?
Dewey LaMarr Hoyt Jr.
So why, when you were in 6th grade, 8th grade, 10th grade, when did Lamar outdo Dewey?
My father was Dewey. I was a junior.
Okay.
So he went by Dewey, and I always went by Lamar.
To differentiate. So even though
Right.
same name, I get it, man.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up around here, in this part of the South, A, people are nicer. B, things are slower. But we can't learn of whoever looks at it or sees it. What's the difference in 2012 versus the 1970s and 80s? Because you've been here.
Yeah, I've been here. I was born here. I stayed here even during my professional career. I retired back here. But it's just, unfortunately, Columbia was a nice little quiet town for a long, long time. And then, as things happen, they want to make more money, so they start building more buildings. It brings in more industry, it brings in more people, and therefore we turn from a nice little community, small town atmosphere to today it's, a pretty hardcore area as far as some of the parts of Columbia. I mean, you would not want to get out of your car and take 2 steps, but you got to deal with what you got to deal with. But one of those areas is the area I grew up in.
Yeah,
for 15 years.
Where did you grow up in?
On the east side of Columbia, played a little place called Pinehurst Park. We were Edgewood, but it was played on the men's softball field actually when I was in Little League. So it was a little 275 feet to a fence. I could get them over that fence pretty easily. So when I grew up, I never lost a game pitching until I was 14, but
Really?
I had no idea I was going to be a pitcher. I had an instructor as the next Major League Baseball player, and he told me, he said, "You're one of the best hitters I've ever seen." He goes,
Who
"I
was
wouldn't
the
get away from it."
instructor?
I can't remember his name because, like I said, I was only 13 years old.
Okay.
But I asked him, I said, with my arm, I said, "You see my abilities?" I said, "Where do you think I ought to put my concentration in? Being a fielder, a hitter, or pitching?" He says, "You're the perfect size for a perfect shortstop. And you hit for an average, and you hit the ball a long, long way. So, in my opinion, I think you should be a shortstop."
Now, high school, you start to move to the next level. So what high school was it on that part of town?
I went to Keenan High School. It used to be a 4A high school. They've since shut that building down, rebuilt them a new high school out on the northeast side of town. It's dropped from 4A to 2A.
Wow.
Unfortunately, it is to this day, and when I went there, Keenan used to be a junior high.
Okay.
And after the 8th grade, they made it a high school. Or excuse me, 9th grade, 7th, 8th, and 9th used to be middle school. 10th, 11th, and 12th was high school. So what they did was they made it, because it was the most modern school in central South Carolina, they upgraded it to a high school, made it a 4A school, so right through middle school to high school, the same school.
Oh, really?
It had to change. But the problem was, in 1970, they withdrew the ability to be able to go to any school you want, no matter where you're living in town,
Okay.
to where they drew district lines, and you had to go to this school, you had to go to that school.
Okay.
I was actually being recruited by AC Flora, which is on the other side of town in the 7th and 8th grade, to go there. They actually helped my mother find a house in their district.
Really?
And when they redrew the lines, I got drawn to go to Keenan. It went from, and I'm not a prejudiced person, never have been, get along with anybody in this world, but it promptly went from a 90% white school as a junior high to a 90% black school as a high school.
Okay.
So it was a little bit tough for my high school career because there was a lot of interracial problems or racial problems. Unfortunately, or fortunately for myself, playing athletics, being in sports, I got along with all those guys, so I never had a racial problem at all.
in high school, where you spending a third of your time pitching and then 2/3 of your time in another position? What were?
No, I pitched and played shortstop. We had a good pitcher, shortstop guy besides myself up until my senior year. And in my junior year, some scouts had come up to me and said, "Look, we can't really tell how good you are. The catcher can't catch the ball." And I said, "That's not my fault." And they said, "Well, your ball moves a little too much." And I said, "Well, to me, that's a good thing." And they go, "Well, we really can't tell how hard you're throwing. Can you just go out there one day and throw as hard as you can?" 2 days before the draft, I'd gone up to Greenwood and we were playing an American Legion game. So they come up to me and said, "Look, the draft is in 2 days. We want to see the fastball." I said, "Okay." So for the first 3 innings, I struck out 9 guys. I walked over to the scout that told me that, and I said, "You guys seen enough of the fastball? Can I throw some breaking balls now?" He says, "Throw whatever you want." So I proceeded to punch him out. We ended up with, I think, a 1-2 hitter to shut him out.
There's a bunch of teams in baseball, the Twins, the Tigers, the White Sox, the A's, the Astros, but this kid from South Carolina doesn't go with any of those teams. He goes with the New York Yankees. So in the minor leagues, as you were moving along, you played with some decent ball players that baseball has trades, it has free agency, it has waivers, it has all these things. You didn't make your name with the Yankees, but you sure came through the Yankee system. Who did you play with?
A lot of guys. Alfredo Griffin, that you just mentioned. Domingo Ramos was the shortstop I was telling you about, was 17 years old and was our starting shortstop in the Dominican. We had 8 other starting shortstops in the major leagues, only this kid was just a little better than the rest of them. He eventually ended up being the starting shortstop for the Toronto Blue Jays. But what was the first thing you said?
Before we put the camera on, you said that you went through the minors, and you and Guidry were right around the same time.
Yeah, we were. He was always a classification ahead of me, but I'd had an injury one year, a bad reaction to some muscle relaxers they put in my back, and I just swole up. It was the end of spring training, so they decided to keep me back in Fort Lauderdale, which was where they had spring training headquarters at the time. And he got the opportunity to move on up a little bit, but that was the year before I got traded. The next year, he was in AAA, I was in AA. Our team won the league title. I was 18-6, I think, something like that. But the next year when I come in spring training, I was told I was going to be given a genuine shot at the 5th starting position. So Billy Martin kept his word. And he gave me the opportunity. I pitched against the Big Red Machine right at the end of those guys. It was really, really quite an experience. But coming up through the Yankee organization like I did, the good thing about it was that after they'd learned how I pitched and that I had very good control and could keep the ball around the plate, and they didn't have to worry about me hitting one of their major league players, every time it was my turn to throw, they'd bring me up to the major league camp to throw batting practice. And that's when I really got to find out what these guys look for, what they like, what they don't like. And I can tell you one example perfectly is Mickey Rivers. When he was the center fielder with the Yankees, I'd come walking on the mound and they'd go, "Start lineup." Mickey'd look out there at me and go, "I ain't batting off." And he'd throw his bat down, he'd walk off. And as I found out later on, the reason was I threw his hard sinker ball, and he had to hit it off the end of his bat, and it hurt his hand, so he didn't want to bat off of it.
You said hard sinker. How would you hold it versus how would you release it?
Well, I would hold a sinker ball like this, at the tips of your fingers, and you got to be on the seams. But that's just one. This one's going to come in and go straight down.
Right.
This is another one I'll turn up on top of here. This one's going to come in and do the same thing, but it's going to be about 4 miles an hour faster.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I can change the speeds off these. What I used to do, that probably was the way I got away with everything, is I basically drew a circle around the plate. They didn't care about the hitter. As long as I could hit my spots, and all I wanted to really do was throw a fastball down the middle, and I could make it move to wherever I wanted it to in that circle. If you lit up all the lights around that circle, whether it be 15 of them, you tell me knock one out, I'll throw it right down the middle, it'll move right there and knock it out.
That's pretty cool.
I had pinpoint control.